You know how to edit the recording, right?
I do, if I need to.
Okay.
All right, I think I'm ready.
Okay. Alrighty. So,
Shit.
hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting month here, where we are doing Supernatural September, and we are that is the theme for the month, and we are starting out with a movie that our host, Katie Cadaver, will tell us all about. Why don't you give us that introduction of what that movie is?
Well, hi guys, Katie Cadaver back after quite the hiatus, like pretty much the entire month of August. I think I was not here. You guys were doing anime, so I missed out on some good ones. But I'm glad to be back.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a little discombobulated. I'm having technical difficulties over here, so I hope everyone can hear me okay. But I am excited to be back and to be talking about Andrew Fleming's 1996 film, The Craft. This one is one of my favorites, strangely, from my childhood. So I'm excited to talk about it. And of course, as always, spoiler warning, because we're going to talk about all aspects of the film. So if you haven't seen this like 23-year-old movie, get on that. So I did not have time to really properly like prepare my own synopsis of the film. So I am just going to read what's here on IMDb because it's right here in front of me. And it says here that a newcomer to a Catholic prep high school falls in with a trio of outcast teenage girls who practice witchcraft, and they all soon conjure up various spells and curses against those who anger them. So that's like kind of a quick synopsis. It does take place in a Catholic high school, and we have kind of like four main characters that are coming together to form a coven and to kind of take care of their like high school girl problems with magic. And things get a little bit crazy because whenever you're messing with magic and the occult and the supernatural, things always get a little out of control. So for me, this was not a first time watch. Gosh, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen this movie. This was one, like I said, from my childhood that I really probably one of the first movies like that I guess you could consider horror. It's kind of very light on the horror side, but probably one of the first like supernatural films that really caught my interest. And upon rewatching it with more of a critical eye, I guess overall I would say that it really reminds me a lot of other like 90s teen films in that a lot of the tropes and stuff are really pretty similar, but we just have this like supernatural element to it. But I mean, that said, I still enjoy watching it very much now. I don't know that I relate to the characters as well as I did when I was younger for obvious reasons. But yeah, overall, it was still a fun watch, and I think it still held up relatively well. And I was just noticing how a lot of the fashion is really coming back from the mid 90s. So that's kind of exciting. So I'm interested to hear what you all thought. And I guess I'll go with Dustin.
Well, I saw this movie for the very first time on Sunday.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's sort of funny. So I first found out about this movie. I used to watch a long forgotten show called Psych. And one of the characters mentioned it's like, are you hitting on the girl from The Craft? Or just some throwaway joke where he just says The Craft. And I'm like, what the hell is The Craft? And then like Shout Factory announced it as a February Blu-ray release. And I was like, oh, that's The Craft? Yeah, okay. And I just happened to find it for $20. And it sat in my movies to watch pile with literally 100 other things. Pretty much since. And so I was really happy we were going to watch it so that I could have like an excuse to like put it in the queue. Because there's just been so much stuff in that pile. Oh my God.
Some might say you have a problem, Dustin.
I do have a problem, yeah. Oh, hey, I've been doing better. I've been putting stuff back and I've been hitting one every day. So, um, I'll maybe be clear by Christmas. Um,
Awesome.
but anyway, so I sat down and watched it on Sunday, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's what all these girls in high school were dressed like. Because a lot of people I knew must have really loved the craft. Like, it's like, oh, so many things make sense now. Oh, that's what Tasha was taught. Oh, okay. So I thought it was awesome. Like, I was really happy with it. It did feel a little long. Like, it's about an hour 40. It's like 100 and some minutes. It did feel kind of closer to 2 hours. There were a few parts that sort of dragged, but there wasn't really anything I would think of cutting. So, I mean, I had a really positive like first experience with it, and I just thought it was awesome. Uh, and kind of speaking to what you said with how it's maybe like an entryway into horror kind of thing. So I learned this from the special features. So the MPAA, they were originally shooting for like a PG-13, but the MPAA refused to give it anything but an R simply because like witchcraft was involved in the plot, and that was it. So that's why it's R.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the MPAA sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely not a rated R movie by today's standards. My 12-year-old was actually starting to watch it with me when I watched it last night. She had to go to bed, so she couldn't finish it. But I thought, yeah, I've had her watch rated R movies before. And I remember, I didn't even realize it was rated R until she asked, and I looked at it. And I was like, I guess it is rated R. I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was like PG-13.
Yeah, so that was directly because the MPAA just said, F you to the filmmakers. So it's actually PG-13. It's totally fine to let your kids watch this.
Sure. Well, who wants to go next? How about you, Dave?
I suppose I'll go next. Well, I, like you, Katie, had grown up with this film, so this is not my first time watching. But looking at it with a critical eye, or my I spy with my critical eye, I seem to remember there were a lot of like high schoolish type movies that came out around the same time, and this one I had on VHS at one point in time, and for some reason I really, really liked Perusa Bulk's character. I think I kind of had a crush on her at one point in time, but yeah. But then, of course, I remembered that she played Dorothy Gale in Return to Oz. So it was like, am I stealing from the cradle or something like that? But moving on. I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, she played Dorothy Gale from Oz in the Return to Oz or whatnot as a kid. And to me, it's like when you see an actress when she was just a child, like the childlike empress from Never-Ending Story, you kind of think of her like as always that child. So it's like Ricky growing up. You don't exactly think of her as sexy, grown up, but then wow.
That reminds me of a joke from Adam Green's TV show Holliston. It's like he meets Danielle Harris, and like she starts making out with him, and he's like, "I've dreamed of this ever since I saw Halloween 4." It's like, I was 12 in that movie. It's like, well, I was 12 when I saw it.
Well, then he goes on to date a 10-year-old in season 2. So,
but then again,
yeah. Well, that's a whole other weird gag they were doing. It's like, she's obviously 10, but she has him like totally fooled. She doesn't have anyone else fooled, but just him.
We are totally off the rails. Sorry, Dave. Carry on.
But then again, you have Robin Doon, who later played in The Mentalist, and two totally different roles. And of course, then you had the African American chick who, like somewhat before this, she played in Embrace of the Vampire, which is along the lines of a similar
Rachel True.
a similar story, but it's more of an erotic thriller. It's except it's with vampires instead of witches.
I was off the rails.
Sorry, we're all off the rails.
So, but
We're going. We don't need roads.
I love just going down memory lane. I mean, there were some pretty cool effects from this film, and I fairly enjoyed it this time around. I think it holds up. Tim, was this? Oh, go ahead. Why don't you tell us?
I think the movie was pretty cool. I watched it yesterday. It had a lot of cool effects, and acting was pretty good. It was pretty good too. And
This was a first time watch for you?
yeah,
Okay.
it was pretty cool. And the only thing I didn't like about the movie was the music. Better.
Could you get a little closer to your mic, please?
Sorry, I think they could have got better music.
I don't know.
I think their music was fine.
I'll have more on the music later when we actually get to that section, but that's an interesting take on the music. So me and Dave are the veterans here with seeing The Craft, and you guys are the newbies. So we're split down the middle. So it's interesting because the plot, is kind of a basic plot. When you think about it, really, we have 4 main characters whose arcs are not real huge. There's some pretty simple stuff going on, and I think, like I said, it kind of follows the tropes of those 90s teen movies, where we don't, like a Mean Girls or a Clueless, we're not getting really detailed about the backstories of our characters, just enough. And I think my take on the plot was just sort of it was a basic layout so that we could, plug in this witch story. And yeah, you could probably plug in a lot of things there. So
interesting, I think, is at the time there was another teen troped movie that I think came out the same year. I think it was called Saved.
I don't think I saw that one.
I think I did see Saved. I thought it came a little bit later.
Well, they've always double billed it together on DVD for some reason. And I thought that one came out around the same time ish. But like I said, there were a ton, a shit ton, like The Skulls. That was a teen trope movie with high schools, The Faculty, movies like that,
I want to say Scream, because this made me think of Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think, I guess jumping faintly ahead, I think one of the songs that they used was in Scream, because I was like, this is that same annoying ass song.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time since I've seen Scream, so I need to brush up on that one. But it definitely did come after this. But I feel like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer were a little bit heavier on the horror because they were more in the slasher genre, whereas this kind of rode that line between being just horror and like a suspense film, I guess.
Like a edgier teen film. Yeah, it was one of those 90s teen songs that you hear it and it's it's just distinct enough to be familiar, but it's just kind of like white noise. You know what I mean?
Which means it's probably been in all the movies at some point.
It's like that do 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 do. If you've ever randomly heard that in a commercial or whatever, it's like that. But anyway, getting back to what Katie was talking about.
Yeah, what was I talking about? Well, the plot. I don't know. It's kind of simple. It's I don't know if we want to run it down for everybody, but Dustin, you're really good at that. Give us a brief plot summary.
Okay, so there are these three kind of weird girls at this Catholic school, and a new girl moves to town, and she starts going to the same school, and eventually they start hanging out with each other, and it's like, they've been kind of into like witchcraft, like at a casual level, and it's like, hey, we have 4 people now, we can form a circle, and apparently
I'll just interject. It's important to point out that the 3 of them, without Sarah, didn't really have much going for them in terms of their magic. It's like they sort of needed her to.
They didn't have magic.
To complete the coven, they really kind of required her. So the fact that she kind of fell in their lap was advantageous for them. But anyway, go on.
Like they have. Before she came, they have like the books, like they know like the chants and the words, but it just wasn't. They were missing something. But so anyway, after they start actually practicing magic, thanks to Sarah, like they do kind of little things for themselves. Like one character, she has really bad burns on her back from some accident she was in, and they use magic to heal her burns. One of the girls at school is like horribly racist and nasty to one of the girls in our group, and so they use a spell to like make her hair fall out, and it's kind of a in good fun sort of thing, at least at first, until it kind of starts getting out of hand.
Well, because they find out that whatever they put out comes back threefold, so that starts playing out once our plot kind of takes a turn. And you were going to tell about Nancy too, and her interesting place.
What Sarah wants is she wants this guy to like her, and that ends up kind of going too far. It's like she can like order him around, and at first it's kind of funny, but after a while, like it starts to work more and more on him until he's like, like showing up outside her house at like 3 a.m. It's like, why are you here? I don't know.
And it's so funny because it's such the like, if you put all of these girls together and what their like individual issues are that they're dealing with, I think it's like a nice sort of combination of what the typical teenage girl maybe goes through in her lifetime. But I think it's hilarious how she doesn't even really like this guy. Well, I guess maybe she does like him, but he does something super shitty to her. So the fact that she wants him to like her after they go out and she says no to going back to his place, and he comes back to school the next day, and even though he didn't get laid, he says he did, and then he says it was the worst lay ever and spreads all these rumors about her, and yet she still wants him to fall in love with her for some reason. Like, I'm such a character I think would not hopefully be portrayed in that way today in modern times. I feel like that's like horrible message to send to teenage girls. But
she wanted to embarrass him in front of his friends. It's like, here, carry my books. Okay. And carry her books too. All right. And his friends are like, hey, can you carry my jock too, huh? And he just kind of like
starts
looks at
out
them
innocent.
like, oh. And they're like, dude, are you okay? Oh. So Nancy doesn't necessarily have like, Nancy lives in like some trailer and her life is horrible, and she doesn't
she still manages to go to a affluent Catholic school.
Yeah, they never quite explain that. Like, she clearly lives in a trailer. Like, it's so small. You know what I mean? Like,
she's part of like special voucher program.
That's my best guess.
Would you say that this school was necessarily a private school or a public school?
It was absolutely a private school because the teacher's a nun. You see in the science class, teachers.
And they were definitely using. They were definitely wearing uniforms.
Yeah, You know what I think, and I
You
could
noticed
be
that,
completely
huh?
wrong. I could be completely wrong on this, but I think that the Catholic school angle might have been an afterthought. Like, what can we add to make this just a little bit more challenging for them? Like, oh, let's put them in a Catholic school because it's edgier if they're witches in a Catholic school versus witches in a public school. I feel like that was thrown in later and like after they had developed Nancy's character because they really don't explain how this really poor girl ends up in this rich school. So that's my theory.
Well, I think it might have been to kind of have them stand out a little bit more because, like, you get more of a sense that these girls maybe don't fit in even worse here than they would like somewhere else. Like they stick out more.
Exactly. Yeah, to create more
So
diversity or more of a
more
challenge for them.
conflict.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all Nancy really seems to want is power. And that's kind of where things take a turn for the worse. Like she has her mom's boyfriend or whatever that guy is. Like he hits her mom and she gives him a heart attack. But you know that ends up going to a good place. So one of the best scenes is like it cuts from him in the ambulance to the guy with the the guy from the life insurance company, and it's like he had a policy through the company. Hopefully this can make up for your loss. And they were kind of like joking about it. It's like, oh, he's gone. Oh, well, because every time we see this guy, he's just a total jerk. And it's like, the policy is $175,000. For us, we get that? Yes. That kind, sweet man.
And it's funny how excited they get over $175,000. Like today, I mean, I don't even know in the mid 90s how great $175,000 would be, but I don't know. They like end up with like a jukebox in a really nice apartment, and it's like, yeah, I don't know if you could even buy an apartment in LA for $175,000. Come on.
Well, I mean, from the scenes that the guy is actually in and like the way he treats them, like it feels like she's just like a couple months away from like kicking him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of.
So it's like, oh, he died. Do what now? Okay, sure. It's like, is there a downside to this?
So without us diving too deeply into like individual scenes, we can just kind of, I think, wrap up the plot.
Yeah. So basically, Nancy starts to get crazier and crazier, eventually leading to the death of that guy that Sarah enchanted. Chris, right?
Skeet Ulrich.
It's funny. I remember the names of the girls, like which I never remember character names, but I forgot Chris. It's like
the like most common name in the world.
I'm 4 or 5. I'm doing great. Anyway, so Nancy goes completely insane after that and tries to use magic to make Sarah kill herself, and Sarah has to fight Nancy off using witch powers.
And it's also important, I guess we can kind of dip into our characters a little bit in a little deeper explanation, but it's important to mention that Bonnie's a natural witch, so she comes into this situation already having some supernatural powers. She talks about envisioning like serpents and stuff, and then when she moves into her new house, she sees them, and there's the strange guy, like homeless guy on the street with the snakes that comes up to her like 2 separate times. So she has these psychic abilities or whatever, and she's has attempted suicide. She also talks about that her mom died in childbirth with her, so she has like this baggage that she kind of brings, which is funny that in the plot they decide to go the route of like, let's make this shitty ass guy like me instead of like, let's fix some of the trauma from my past. Like you would think that might be more motivating for her in terms of what she wants to do with this, newfound control of these magic powers. But, instead she decides to enchant like a douchebag guy.
Well, when you're younger, you don't really think things particularly
I
all
mean,
the way
I
through.
guess I'm
Like,
definitely looking at it from an adult's perspective versus like the teenage perspective that I would have been looking at it, when I first started watching this movie, because that aspect of it never jumped out at me before now, where I'm like, yeah, I guess that's actually super fucked up. That's what she wants to do.
so, just a quick, so that's Sarah's character. You said Bonnie. So just in case somebody at home got confused,
Oh, did I say
listening
Bonnie?
to us.
I meant
Yeah, Sarah. It's okay.
So
Looking out for the fans.
Bonnie is our Nev Campbell burn victim with the scars on her skin, which I thought was a cool angle because I feel like scars on your skin can sort of represent, like, I felt like Bonnie's character and Rochelle's character were kind of similar in that, well, and Rochelle being like the only black girl in the school, that was like her adversity. She had a racist person. And Bonnie's whole thing was like, she was ashamed of her body and she was hiding her body and her scars. And I think those two characters in themselves were kind of similar in that it was about how they appeared to other people, and where Bonnie's issue was something that she tried to tackle with magic to take away the burns. Rochelle isn't going to not make herself black, hopefully. So what she goes for is basically like attacking the other girl and making her hair fall out because the racist girl makes fun of Rochelle's quote nappy hair. So
Yeah. That was a surprise. Like, I didn't see that coming.
Oh yeah, I related to both of those characters even today. Just looking at like, oh yeah, I can see, being ashamed and trying to hide my body, and also feeling, just othered for how I look and things about me that I can't necessarily control. So I didn't relate to Sarah's character nearly as much as I was able to relate to Bonnie and Rochelle. And then of course Nancy's character, her struggle is like definitely more internal. Like obviously you see that she's poor, but she's doesn't seem to have like issues with her appearance or with her confidence. Her struggle is really like she has no control in her life, and it's all this like internal struggle. And I think she's sort of the example of like she's strong on the outside, but she's very weak on the inside, which is why I think when she invokes Manon or whatever, she it goes to that dark place. Because she is a little bit weaker inside and maybe more susceptible to the dark side of things.
Well, one way they mentioned it in they described it in some of the special features was that she has kind of an addictive personality, and so she becomes kind of addicted to the power of like using magic, and that's kind of what makes her start to unravel.
Sure. And again, I was able to relate to her character quite a bit as well, that that was kind of I was kind of that girl in school, that like kind of gothy chick, kind of like rough around the edges. I still, kind of am that, really.
Well,
so I related to her, like, I always try to be tough on the outside, even though I could be really hurting on the inside or vulnerable on the inside. I had to maintain like a very tough exterior. That was just like one of my survival techniques. And I feel like that's a lot of what Nancy's character is doing. And we see that quite a bit, especially the move she makes for Chris, where it's like she's looking for some kind of approval from this jerk ass guy who obviously didn't, rejected her or something, because they do talk about how Nancy and he had some kind of relationship and he spreads disease, she says, as she's warning Sarah about him. But the first chance she gets after she sees him like obsessed with Sarah because of the spell, she's trying to get in there and get him to turn his attention to her. Like, what's wrong with, she kind of has this idea of like, what's wrong with me? Why don't you want me or whatever? And it's really quite pathetic when you look at it. So
yeah,
I feel like Her character's really still very vulnerable and weak on the inside. But that's my female perspective as a former teenage girl and witchy teenage girl at that.
Well,
quote unquote weirdo, Mr.
Well, that's something we definitely don't know about. So, I mean, that's why I'm so happy you were able to come on for this episode, because I think there's a lot of stuff in this movie that I wouldn't think about the same way, like without that different perspective.
Sure. Well, and this was such a movie, that was a big part of like my teen years. So, when I think about how I related to it then, it totally makes sense. And I just try to take myself back to that teenage girl when I watch it, and I'm able to do it still, I think.
I think that this plot line definitely was unique for its time. I mean, for the high school trope that it brought, and I think because I was in the middle between, I was like in between wearing gothic clothes and wearing preppy clothes at the same time when I was in high school. So I would call it more of a grunge, more of a grunge look than anything else, because I grew up in the age of Kurt Cobain and whatnot and during high school, and the idea of witchcraft always fascinated me. How about you guys?
Oh, definitely. I would be lying if I said my friends and I did not play light as a feather, stiff as a board, attempt to put love spells on people. Yeah, we did quite a few of those things, probably influenced a lot by this movie.
I had a book, but I got like bored.
What about you, Tim? Have you ever believed in witchcraft, or what are your thoughts on
it? I think it's what is it? I think it's like it could be real, but it could not be real. You never know. It could be like
agnostic.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely one of those things where I think if it is real, or if somebody does have the ability to do things, they're not talking a lot about it. I think when you have people who talk about it a lot and claim to be this or that, it's probably less likely that they really are. I just have a feeling that if you're, I don't know, gifted enough to have some sort of supernatural power, that you're probably pretty humble about it.
Yeah.
I know. I used to kind of be able to do this thing. It's like I don't really have dreams much anymore, but when I was younger, like I would dream almost every time I would go to sleep, and I would get like weird like flashes and images of things, and then like a few months later, like I would see that thing like somewhere, but it's never like anything useful. It's like the side of a trash can, and then I'll be walking on the street and I'll see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's always something stupid like that. It still happens sometimes, but I'm pretty
Almost
sure it's
like
in my imagination.
Well, it's like deja vu in a way. There's times where I have
Just months in
super
advance.
intense, like deja vu, where I'm like, I really feel like I know exactly what's going to happen next. And a lot of times I'll predict it in my own head. Like I feel like I've been through this already. So yeah, there's weird things. I was once told, I had my birth chart read by an astrologer, and she told me that I had like some kind of special abilities, and she assumed that I already knew about it. And I was like, oh, I do? And she was like, well, of course, right? I was like, if you say so. I'm not sure what those are, but I'll get back to you when I figure it out.
And I know that when I was a kid, I was always told that my great grandfather was or great grandmother. I think my grandfather's grandmother was left on the doorstep of a church, and it was always believed that she was from Romani descent. So I've always thought that I've had some gypsy blood in me somehow, some way.
The changeling.
My grandma always said that too. Her parents were both from Czechoslovakia, so she had always said that there was some Romani in our blood too. She said that's why because we're gypsies is why we like jewelry so much. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds wrong, but it is yet to come up in a 23andMe or anything, so I can't. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, I just think that's kind of a. I've always thought that was kind of a funny concept. It's like you have a supernatural power, but it's more obnoxious than cool, you know?
It's
like,
because we don't
again.
know how to use it. There is a place for that guy who dreams of the side of that trash can. He just isn't in the right place to plug that information where it goes. That's the problem.
Tim,
But like in the perfect system, you would be in a place where that would be useful. But instead, we're, I don't know, making money to put gas in cars to drive us to jobs to make money to put gas in our cars, and we're just totally off topic.
So capitalism is the enemy.
Are there any characters that you relate to Tim, in this film?
Like some of the characters, you know, like feeling different. I always felt different.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big time theme in here. The idea of feeling othered or feeling like an outcast, and I think it's a big motivation for, you know, why they turn to magic.
Yeah, there's a really cool moment like after they first really start using magic when it's just the four of them like walking through like the cafeteria and they just look so confident and different than they did like before.
Oh yeah, it definitely gives them power in more ways than one.
So
I don't know. I guess we kind of covered plot and characters pretty well. What did you guys think about the 90s special effects?
You know they. Oh, were you going, Tim?
Oh, sorry. I think they were pretty cool.
Yeah,
they weren't too bad.
Yeah, what was your favorite one?
Mine was the one where the snakes had her fingers turned to snakes, and there was like cockroaches coming out of her mouth and stuff.
That was gross. That's always a super gross scene to me. Ugh, bugs give me the creepy crawlies. Snakes don't bother me as much, but the bugs.
All those bugs and scorpions and snakes and all that stuff came out of the woodworks and whatnot. So that somehow that reminded me of the part in Indiana Jones when he was jumping down into this pit of snakes, and he's like, "Snakes! I hate snakes."
Yeah, that actually looked pretty decent. There was like a few scenes, particularly where Sarah's like, "Oh, look what I can do," and she can like change her hair color, but it's so terribly like
that
green
looks pretty
screen or
phony.
whatever. Yeah. Oh, well, and little tidbit of trivia: she was actually wearing a wig for this movie because she was in Empire Records and she had shaved her head for that one, so it was like just wrapping up before they started shooting The Craft, so she had to wear a wig for the whole movie, which is why her hairline looks goofy. But yeah, that special effect was pretty poopy. Like it looked very 90s, and I have like an old DVD copy that I watched it, so I was like, yeah, that one didn't hold up as well. Some of the like flying scenes or whatever, they don't look 100% confident. But overall, like I'm really good at just like not having like large expectations for special effects, particularly in movies that are older. Like I understand what's available at that time or whatever. And of course, I'm still super, super impressed by a lot of practical effects from 80s horror movies and stuff. So, this film left a little to be desired in that arena, but I think the serpents and all the creepy crawlies and stuff, all that seemed to look really cool. So
yeah, I think that was my big effect. I think that was my big thing for effects too. Because I mean, a lot of what we saw, I mean, it was passable. I mean, there were some things that were just like, oof, that doesn't play well. But most of the effects held up pretty well, and especially, so during the climax, Nancy and the other girls are trying to scare Sarah by having like, you know, snakes and rats and roaches and just everything nasty like pour out of the walls like in her house. And those were all real. Those look like all real animals. Like I think they used something like 2,000 snakes in some of those scenes.
Oh, really?
And I was really impressed by that. One of the fun things I heard on the Blu-ray was the girl who played Sarah was talking about, it's like, and you know, the rats were there and they smelled, and I mean, even these were fancy Hollywood rats. They were shampooed and everything, and they still smelled. Fancy Hollywood rats.
One of the cool effects that I thought was cool was in that build up for the last scenes or whatnot. There was a part where you thought that the main character
Sarah.
Sarah, her where she had evidently hidden on Nancy. And when Nancy was looking for her, all of a sudden she came out of the mirror, and that mirror effect, her stepping outside of the mirror. To me, that looked cool.
That did look cool.
Yeah. Did you? I feel like I think I might have accidentally cut you off there, Whore Devil. Did you have something else too, or when I was talking about the animals?
Yeah, the animals.
Yeah.
The animals look pretty good.
Was there a particular favorite bug that you liked on the movie?
Rats.
Yeah. Jeez, favorite bug. Yeah, that one brown cockroach was really cute.
I mean, look at him emote. I mean, damn.
No, I think overall our effects were decent. They held up. I'm excited to get on here to the music.
Music was sweet.
Yeah,
Go off.
I actually just looked up the soundtrack on Spotify, and it's funny because I'm looking at, you know, the names of the songs, and to your point, Dustin, about like, yeah, that one 90s song that you're so right, because I'm looking at the titles of these tracks and I'm like, yeah, that's what that's called. Oh, that's who did that song. Like, okay, wow. They're just songs that are familiar to me because they were either used in movies from that time period, or I remember hearing them on the radio or something. So yeah, I just think it's funny that none of them really jump out at me as like, yeah, that's that song that I listened to a million times. I don't know. I don't even recognize a lot of the Sponge.
Neither do I.
It's that noise again. Damn.
Yeah. I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah, but all great stuff. Great music. Definitely takes me back to that period in time. Like I can just, I don't know, like Rock 1021, New Rock 1021, I think is what it was called back then.
There's a Tool song on there. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no Tool on here, but Letters to Cleo. Remember that?
Jewel.
No Jewel.
Yeah,
Under the Water.
The new Tool was pretty good. If you've heard that.
Oh
yet.
yeah, don't get me off on a tangent about the new Tool. Yeah, it's super awesome.
My favorite joke was, there are so many kids being sent to their grandmas this weekend so that their dads can get high and listen to the new Tool album.
Yeah, right.
And I listened to the first track and I was like, this would be pretty sweet to get high to. Anyway.
Jewel track on there. Yeah, no, I've been getting high to Tool for 20 years. It's great stuff.
Anyway, I don't know what the name of it is, but one of the songs they used in this was like the title theme, was the song they used for the intro to Charmed, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh, I never watched that, so I'm not sure, but I think so.
Charmed was this old show about, I think, wasn't Nev Campbell in it too? It was like teen witches like growing up. So I kind of wonder what the influence may or may not have been.
Yes, Dave, there is a Jewel song. You're right. Under the Water. You're right. I pulled up a different listing of the soundtrack. Sorry, just for clarification.
I know. What are your thoughts on 90s music, Mr. Devil?
90s music is cool. I didn't like the in this movie though.
You weren't a
this
fan?
is totally like emo high school teenage girl 90s music though.
I like Marilyn Manson music. I like heavy
Yeah,
metal.
there should have been some Marilyn Manson in this movie. And I
Yeah,
don't think
Was he a thing
wasn't
yet?
not. I don't think so. Not quite. Maybe.
or at least some corn.
Yes.
Corn was right on the edge of.
Maybe
not
Life is
being
Peachy. But I feel like something
remember
from Life is Peachy could
Corn
have
in
gone on
like
this.
98, 99 is when I remember hearing about Corn.
Corn is from 92 or 93.
But I mean, like, when did they actually get popular?
They got popular pretty quick. I think their second album's 96. Maybe 94.
This is from 96, so
Yeah, I guess they would have at least had their second album out, if not their third. Well, I think Fall of Leader was like 98, right?
Corn does not really fit the theme for this movie. Like, Marilyn Manson might have been able to work, but honestly, I think the music that they chose fit pretty well, considering probably what their demographic was that they were aiming towards. I think it's definitely like emo teenage girl stuff.
I agree with that. I guess with the kind of like vibe that the music had, like a few months ago, I was like driving back from Chicago with somebody, and she was listening to some band called Paramore that I'd never heard before, and it's like, there's like a different feel to this that I've never heard before, and like the music that they picked for this movie had kind of that same sort of vibe to it. I don't really know how to put it into words, but it's like, okay, I think I described it before as, this feels like it came from a completely different person's head, I guess. Like somebody with like totally different sensibilities.
It's funny that you should say that, because it's very alternative. Like the mood and the tone with the music just takes me back to that period of time in the mid-90s. It's very like emo before emo was a thing, right?
Yeah, this was before goth was a thing too, wasn't it?
No, goth was alive and well in the 90s, big time. So
it was definitely at the tail end of the 80s that goth was. It was.
I mean, yeah,
around.
Goth can be traced back pretty far, Victorian era. No,
Our history lesson here.
Yeah, without getting into goth history, no, I think it's really hard for me to put into words, but I feel like the musical choices for this film were so appropriate for what it is, being a 90s teen horror drama, whatever you want to call it. I just feel like it was the choices were pretty spot on, in my opinion.
So, do we believe that there is a supernatural presence in this film at all?
Yeah. I would say not in the same way that we typically see it in most horror movies. Like, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Like, they're just inexperienced, tapping into into powers that they don't understand how to control, and also what the consequences of their actions are. The old lady in the store, or old lady, she's not old, lady in the store that we didn't mention, she runs like the magic shop or whatever, the crystal lady. She's got all the new age stuff in her store, and that's where they go to like steal stuff and whatever.
And supplies,
yeah, and she's clearly a witch too, and kind of reaches out to that, to, I think, Sarah specifically.
She notices Sarah. Like, the other girls is just like, okay, that'll be $30. Are you gonna pay for it this time? And then, like, with Sarah, it's like, oh, hi, your mother was a witch. Did you know that? You had to have known that.
Yeah. So she has a connection with Sarah. So when Sarah's in trouble, she goes back there and asks for help and like kind of figures out this is where Sarah learns like you have to be more responsible with these powers and this is what you have to do and whatever. So I think it's not like there's something sinister going on here. I think it's really just that each one of these girls has this power and this ability at their fingertips, and it's how they choose to use it. And clearly, Nancy is our antagonist in that the way the power affects her is negative, and the way that it affects Sarah is more positive. Once Sarah actually gets some courage to stand up for herself, she spends a good deal of the movie kind of being a pushover and being kind of weak, even though she's like the natural witch. So she has to figure out how to get that confidence and get that power to do the right thing. And it's such a allegory for, the struggles of the teenage girl, I think, having had been one at one time in my life. I think it's just, so I feel like the supernatural presence isn't as sinister or maybe as out of control as it might be in other films. And I will admit that when it comes to horror movies, I'm not big on supernatural. But the other witch movie that immediately comes to mind for me is Suspiria, where and if we're going to compare the supernatural presence in Suspiria to the one in The Craft, it's very different. Our main character in Suspiria has really no control over what's happening. She's kind of a victim to the supernatural power, whereas
it's like a suffocating pall of dread.
Right, and people are dying left and right, and there's really no explanation for it. And in The Craft, it's there's an explanation for pretty much everything bad that happens, and it's all because of the choices that they make. So I don't know, it just feels very different. It feels very much like
it's like the magic is there and available rather than
and it's about how they use it. What they choose to do.
They initially thought, and it's like, oh, what if we show? It's Minot, right? I keep trying to say Mammon.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Like they were talking about how they thought, oh, maybe we should have him like manifest or do something with that, or maybe like show his eyes or something. But they ultimately decided against it, because they felt like it kind of took away from, what you were describing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, all they'd have to do is add like some kind of sinister-looking figure, or some kind of Helena Marcos type, deity or entity or something, and it completely changes the tone. Whereas this is all, it's within them. It's the power that they're invoking, they're doing it. So
yeah, and I think that works much better.
At least for this particular subject matter, like I'm not going to say that The Craft is a better movie than Suspiria. But
well, no, I mean,
not by a long shot, but for many different reasons.
Go ahead, Tim.
I think that the girls didn't have the power. Like the other girls didn't have the power, but the one that moves in had the power, because when she came, like they started having all the power and stuff. Every time she was around, there was power.
They only got power when they completed their circle. When they added the fourth.
I do believe that they had the power of friendship.
Yeah. They didn't have
that conquers anything.
Well,
we still have the power of imagination. I like this guy. He's a positive thinker. Everybody else in the room. Nobody will recognize what that's from. Deal with it.
Power of
So, does anybody want to throw out some of their favorite things from the movie?
The special effects.
Tim likes the special effects. What about you, other Dave, Dustin? What are you guys' favorites?
Well, I would have to say that, um, like I said before, one of my favorite scenes was the part where she came out of the mirror, and then shortly after that is when she totally drove Nancy insane.
Yeah, that kind of battle between Sarah and Nancy, the climax of the film, is pretty good. Exciting.
You know, it's a little off book, but I think I like some of the early scenes when they're meeting and just, going out and having a good time. It's like there's a scene where they get off the bus and the bus driver, it's like, you girls watch out for those weirdos. We are those weirdos, mister.
That is probably the most iconic quote from that movie. I've got it on a t-shirt and a sticker that's on my water bottle because I relate to being a weirdo.
Yeah, and just all those little moments where they were interacting before things started getting really heavy. I think another favorite of mine is, it's like, why are you watching him? He's a jerk. And she's like, hey, go long. And the dude's like, what? And he falls over. I laughed really hard at that. It's like,
yeah, where they're kind of establishing the dynamics of the jocks and the weirdos and the whatever. Yeah, I kind of enjoy that stuff too. I guess as far as favorites, Nancy's really my favorite character. She's the most interesting. She's the best dressed, best makeup, best jewelry. So I guess I really just like her style. But also I think, like I said, I can still relate to that character, that edgy and tough exterior, but really struggling on the inside. I felt like her character was really looking for something that, it was really easy for the other girls to kind of come up with what they wanted to do with their magical abilities. And for her, it was you could tell she was almost, in a sense, ashamed of it. She'd said it real quick, or all the powers of Manon or whatever. She was real fast about it and just ashamed. There was so much that she needed to do to feel better. And we see it kind of play out. It's not just get a better place to live. That's one layer of it, where it's can she go home and not be laying in her bed and getting dripped on by the rain? That's one layer. And the next layer is not being in an abusive situation. And then feeling the validation from the guy. I felt like her character was very multi-layered and at least interesting to me. Like I said, I just related to that internal struggle so much. And also she's just hot and has great style. So yeah.
that reminds me of during the scene where the four of them are doing their power walk through the cafeteria. On the director commentary, I'm not gonna point it out per se, but he was really cold that day on set. Okay.
Oh yeah, her nipples are totally sticking out. Okay, little tidbit. Totally had a crush on her when I was younger. Again, she's hot, and they always have her nipples showing out of her shirt and stuff. So, I have a thing for Nancy, I guess. I got to meet Fruza Balk at, I think it was Horror Hound last year.
Oh, cool.
That was cool. She's aged pretty well, I guess I'd have to say. Yeah. But yeah, her character, definitely the best dressed with the vinyl jacket. Oh, I want that wardrobe.
Yeah, she well, sort of. I wanted to mention this earlier, but we were trying to talk when we were talking about what Nancy wants. I think the best description of that we get is when she's explaining the ritual to Sarah and the other girls. It's he just fills you and fixes everything that's broken inside. It's
yes.
That's a big list for you, isn't it?
Yes.
And one thing that I kind of noticed was Bonnie has a weird kind of reaction to that, just a kind of close up, and it's what's going on there? Did anybody else notice that?
Yeah,
Hello,
they don't really get too deeply into the other girls all that much as far as like what's going on for them internally. Like I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that. Um but yeah, particularly like Bonnie, like, well, how did you get burned? Like what, how has that manifested in your life for you? Like I think it would be cool to get like some origin stories behind. Like maybe they should do like a comic
Yeah,
book or something.
that'd
Maybe
be a
they
cool
already did.
idea. So
I
you did get that great. Do get that great payoff with her though. Like after after they've used the magic to heal her burns, and she just comes into class like and just like throws like all her coverings off for the first time. It's like, sorry, I'm late, and the guys who are like jerks to her before, like, hey.
Feeling all hot.
I don't know.
I never-
I don't know about you, but I was kind of at the end there with Veruza Balk in the psych ward, thinking, okay, she's kind of doing a Harley Quinn kind of a thing there for a moment.
she would make an awesome Harley Quinn. She would do like the most amazing Harley Quinn, I think, if they ever had to recast Harley Quinn in the 90s when she
Oh,
was first invented. But I didn't actually say my favorite scene, which is kind of, I really like when they get off the bus. But I think the most benign like favorite scene that I have is when Nancy's walking through the party looking for Chris or whatever, and the girls are all looking like, oh my God, she's here, and she just sticks her tongue out, and I'm like, meh. I love that. I've done that
it's like the
several times. Like,
Marilyn Manson tainted love video where they go to like the party and he just like pushes a jock out of the way, just like puts his hand on the guy's face and pushes him out of the way.
you
It
don't
made me think of
understand
that.
how symbolic that is in my life. I've been pushing jocks out of the way for ever. So anybody else got any more favorites they want to throw out there before we kind of just wrap it up, I
Wrap her
guess?
up.
Yeah, I like the scene at the end where the girl's in the mental hospital and like the nurse is like giving her a medicine and she's like, I have the power. I had power. I had power. And you can hear the nurse say, you don't have no power. And she just leaves the room.
Yeah, that was sad.
Also kind of hot, I'll just say.
Yeah, I like to imagine that, after a couple months, Sarah, it's like, okay, she's learned her. Sarah, I like to imagine that Sarah lets her cool off for a couple months and then gives them their powers back. So, and that it has like a happier ending. That's what I imagine because I am quite soft.
Well, have you guys heard that they're talking about a remake?
That would be cool.
I almost want to say like Blumhouse is talking about it, but I could be wrong.
Oh, fuck yeah. Well, Blumhouse has been doing so much good stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a really
don't quote me on that, but I could be wrong.
How about they make a sequel?
Yeah, I
with
think
them as like adults. That could be cool.
Yeah, I think that could work. I mean, they're all still working actors, I'm pretty sure.
The Craft 2, Nancy's Revenge.
Right? I watch that shit.
Get to the mental hospital.
give it like a silly title. Just go nuts. Well, back on the Blumhouse thing though, like there are kind of a lot of rumors with like the stuff Blumhouse is doing. So like I follow those guys on Twitter, and I think one of my favorite moments with that was somebody was an article. It's like Blumhouse developing blah blah blah, and they retweeted it and they were like, we are, and it's like Jason Blum saying that. It's like, we're doing what now?
Oh yeah, the rumors get ridiculous. So, like I said, I'm not trying to spread them, but I think that's what I heard, but I could be wrong.
Well, I hope it happens. I mean, we've gotten some fairly cool remakes in the last few years. Some better received than others. I mean, I liked the new Halloween quite a lot. And I even thought the new Pet Sematary had some good merits. Even though
I haven't seen it yet.
It's a little, it'll take some getting used to, but I think what they tried to do was, was worth a shot, and it made their version of the story interesting. So, I mean, Probably not as good as the original one if you really like examine everything, but that's kind of a high bar anyway. So, I mean, I'd say it's like a 7.5. So,
Fair enough.
yeah, see it.
I will get around to it eventually, I'm sure. Now, I'm reluctant to ask this question because it could probably keep us on the air for another half an hour if I ask it, but I'm going to ask anyways. Who would you cast for the Craft remake? Like for our 4 main characters?
I don't know teens. Crap.
Neither do I. That's why I'm asking you. I'm like, no, that's in movies nowadays.
Honestly, the only like younger female actors I can think of are the girl that's in the new It movies, and she was also Nancy Drew, which that movie turned out to be pretty cool. I really liked that movie.
Angelina Jolie.
I'm pretty sure it's not Angelina Jolie.
No.
She's like 14.
I would cast her.
She's too old, though.
She's
she
like
can't
60.
Play a teenager. Yeah. Well, she's not quite that 50.
And then
she's definitely too old to be a teenager anymore.
And
maybe
if you're
in
ever
the
40
90s.
old.
How about that girl from the Carrie remake? The one that played Carrie?
Oh, Chloe Grace Moretz? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
How about the girl from Stranger Things?
Yeah, I was gonna say Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah,
she was just in her first like movie, Godzilla.
Yeah.
I thought she was good in that.
I liked her.
Yeah,
I love that movie. That movie was awesome. Like, oh my god, so good. She didn't get to do a whole lot, but she was fine. What's that?
Godzilla, really? I haven't
yeah,
seen
she's a main character in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Most of the critics who gave it bad reviews are just assholes. Like, it's awesome. Like, okay, some of the jokes are stupid because they're clearly meant for kids. It's like, that lizard is juiced, like just stuff like that, but ignore that. The combat is amazing.
I was thinking Becky. I was thinking possibly Becky G.
Who's that?
She was in the movie Axel, and she was also, I believe, one of the Power Rangers in the new Power Rangers. She was the Yellow Ranger.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I loved that movie. Yeah, bring those guys in, or girls. You know what I mean. Just get them in more movies.
Yeah.
So, man, that was a cool movie. Like, I did not know you could tell a genuinely good / compelling story with Power Rangers. Like, I didn't think you could do it. So,
I still don't think you can do it, but okay.
Well, see the 2017 one. You'll be surprised. Of course,
I wish I cared enough to watch it.
Well, it didn't do well because, the stupid Power Ranger fans, it's like, the Megazord's the wrong color, this sucks. It's like, that's like the least important thing. Like, oh, I hate you. Anyway, rant over. So, yeah, I guess in closing, the Craft is flippin' sweet. See it as soon as you can. Pair it with Hocus Pocus, because when this was over, I really wanted to watch Hocus Pocus.
Also a good witch movie from the 90s.
Same effects guy, too, I think, right? Tony Gardner?
I would not be surprised. Tony Gardner really did effects for Hocus Pocus?
Yeah, one of the extras was like an interview with him, and he was talking about, and it's like, oh yeah, we had the thing where, the moths come out of Billy's mouth in Hocus Pocus, and that's how we learned to do this, and this. And it's like, oh, okay.
Shut up. His like filmography of all the movies he's done is impressive. And I will say, I have to just toot my own horn for a minute. When I met Tony Gardner, he complimented me on my makeup work, and that was pretty flippin' sweet, because like he did the half corpse in Return of the Living Dead. Like, Of course, I'm gonna be like starstruck by his compliments of my work.
I will put a disclaimer on that. I watched The Serpent and the Rainbow like immediately after this, and I might have gotten them slightly mixed up in terms of who did the effects. So there's a caveat, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he was talking about Hocus Pocus and the Craft.
I'm looking it up right now.
I haven't watched Hocus Pocus.
He is listed for Hocus Pocus. That is correct.
Is he listed for the Craft?
You know, I didn't even look up for the Craft, like the effects people, but
we're gonna pretend I'm right. Good.
I'm still looking.
School started. My brain is mush.
Because for some reason these don't always go in like chronological order. They go in like popularity order.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know who that is, he did the makeup effects for Thriller.
Yes, that was like one of his first projects. He is listed for the Craft. Okay, good.
Oh, all right, good. I'm not insane. I win.
Also, he did like some stuff on the new Child's Play movie too. So,
you know, that turned out to be so much better than I thought it was gonna be. Like, it shocked me how good it was.
I have yet to see it, so don't spoil it.
I'd be surprised if you weren't at least satisfied with it.
We'll see. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for Chucky. That was another one that, as a kid, I was like, "Oh, Chucky! I can do those movies as a child. Like they don't scare me enough that I won't watch them." So
this Chucky actually kind of scared me a little.
Really?
And I don't think regular Chucky has ever done that.
Nice. Well, I look forward to maybe being scared.
So go in expecting it to be like totally different though.
Sure.
So.
Well, all right, guys. I think we had a pretty decent discussion about this one.
Yeah.
Who wants to start with promoting themselves so that we can close out? Dustin, great. You go ahead.
Do what now?
Tell us about yourself, where you're from, where people can find you online, all that stuff.
I'm a horror collector here in Milwaukee. I have my own channel where I just like show off the various junk I find around town, which is substantial, as you may remember from the beginning of this fiasco. So I have my channel is The Crypt of Horrors. And so I think I have almost all of my backlogged videos up now, and I'm going to start shooting new stuff soon. I'm working on getting my own kind of horror exclusive podcast, like off the ground. Like I got a bunch of people, willing to be guests. That'll pop up at some point. You can follow me on Twitter, where I hang out a lot and interact with me. I'm also The Crypt of Horrors on there, and I've got a heavily neglected Instagram for the collection at, you guessed it, The Crypt of Horrors. So, yeah, come check my stuff out and argue with me on Twitter. It'll be a fun time.
Tim, why don't you go next?
Okay. I live in San Bernardino. I make YouTube videos of like pickups and like my collection and movie reviews, animations, all kinds of stuff. And you can find me on my YouTube channel, Horror DVD Devil 333. You could also find me on Facebook on Horror DVD Devil Gray.
Okay. And Katie, why don't you go and then I'll go. Katie?
Ha!
Oh.
Katie has left the chat.
Elvis has left the building. Anyways,
she might come back. How about you go, Dave?
I'll go then. And my name is David Streggy. I run Inside Movies Galore, but I kind of share it with all of you who are on here and want a chance to host. And I also do reviews and video collection videos and interviews with directors and so on and so forth. But lately I've been doing video collection videos. So you can catch all that on Delusions of Grandeur. And I also have a group where if you wanted to discuss a movie with me, you can more than welcome to join it, and so on and so forth. Currently, I am producing behind two films that I'll mention: Bride of the Werewolf and the third installment to the High Death trilogy, High Fear, which High Fear is involves directors Todd Sheets, Brad Sykes, and I believe Tim Ritter. So, in any case, Katie, are you back?
I am back. Sorry, technical difficulties on my end. Thanks for waiting for me.
Are you behind the mask?
Yeah.
Back.
So, yes, I'm back. So if you'd like to keep up with all the things that I'm doing, my name is Katie Cadaver with a K, and I am a horror artist, model, and burlesque performer and producer from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm also the makeup artist for the horror punk band Ratbat Spider. I'm a Tromette with Troma Entertainment and a Dead Girl for Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. All just search Katie Cadaver and you'll find me. And also, you can come and see me this weekend in Indianapolis for Horror Hound Weekend and Mask Fest going on at the Indiana Convention Center, September 6th through the 8th. I will be there with Troma. So come by the Troma booth and say hi and pick up some goodies. And I also have an event coming up, Friday the 13th Fest. It's actually the kickoff party for the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference. And that will be happening at the Walker's Point Music Hall on 6th and National in Walker's Point here in Milwaukee. And we're going to have Ratbat Spider playing, also Sinister Fate from Chicago. They are back after a little bit of a hiatus. So this is like a debut show with their new lineup and stuff. And we also have the Illogical from Chicago, and then a full set of burlesque and drag from Grindhouse Tees. So I will be performing in that one. And you can come out and see all the cool, awesome Friday the 13th fun that we're going to be having, because that's what we do. We celebrate Friday the 13th like it's a holiday around here.
It's a good time. I've been
really
to the
is.
thing.
Alrighty, and so there you have it, folks. And next week we will be doing. Dustin, do you remember the movie for next week?
Is it Silent Hill?
Yep.
I think it is.
Silent Hill. So don't make too much noise, everyone. But stay tuned for another.
I thought my behind the mask thing was the worst joke of all time, but
well, we're bound to make some corny jokes around here sometime. But anyways, like, share, and subscribe, and definitely stay tuned for another exciting episode with Supernatural September. Thank you for listening, and have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
night.
Bye, everyone.